My guest today is a guy I've known for, oh my gosh, I hate counting those years now, Lee, because it feels like it was just a few years ago. It's closer to half a lifetime ago. I met more,
And
oh my gosh. Yeah, right. Well, our guest today, welcome to the show. Our guest today is one of the rare people who has left and right brain skills like kind of equal. It's really freakishly good. He's got like a technical background. He's, machine parts. He's helped billionaires become successful. He's got such a wide range of experience and insight. I guarantee you one show isn't going to be enough. But today's show, we talked briefly before we started the cameras going here, it's about intuition and how we're supposed to trust our gut. And he's going to share with us today why trusting your gut the way you're doing it is probably not accurate. Even though they say trust your gut, he's going to tell us that there's a different question we need to be asking so that we can trust our gut in a proper way as opposed to an improper way, because there's some things we doubt, and he'll give us the reasons why in a moment. But first, I'll just bring on the show today my good friend and colleague, Mr. Lee Kolaski, who goes by Leon. I call him Lee, or he calls me Crowe. Call him whatever you want. Just don't call him late for dinner. Lee, welcome to the show today.
welcome, Doug. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I can't wait to hear about this. We're going to talk about a lot of things, but before we get into trusting our gut better and learning how to, manage our lives and make some success or some inroads, I want to hear more details about your background, because I think it's important for people to understand where you're coming from and your journey as it relates to performance and the people you've worked with, whatnot. Give us a little bit of background on your life. Start as far back as you want to go.
We'll go all the way back to coming out of high school.
Yeah.
You had mentioned my technical background. So
Yeah.
I originally had started out as a tool and die maker.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked in the manufacturing world. I worked for one of the best companies in the country, a really world-class company. And as part of that, I went through a 5-year apprenticeship program where I went to school at nights. And during the day, I basically worked 50-hour weeks and went to school a couple nights a week, actually at Illinois Institute of Technology, one of the top engineering schools in the world, to learn business and manufacturing. And that's kind of where my engineering brain comes in when it comes to problem solving for business or helping people with very challenging health issues. So from that, I'd spent, probably 10 years in the manufacturing world, did really well with that, really enjoyed that. It never felt like work. It felt like I was able to just tinker and make things, and I really, really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And then I had transitioned into becoming an entrepreneur. Doug and I had shared a mutual friend. I had done my first private placement with a company with a mutual friend of Doug's, and I had opened up many dry cleaning locations in the Chicagoland area, had done that business for probably 5-6 years, and then eventually met Doug, where we were in the real estate development business and then also the real estate coaching business, which ultimately led me into marketing. One of the biggest challenges that we had with the real estate business and the real estate coaching business was leads and generating people for our seminars that we were holding on a weekly basis in Chicago. So that really forced me to learn about marketing. And over the last 20 years, I've become really proficient at marketing. I think the first few years was not too good at that. And then really surrounded myself with really big experts in that space. And then it was about 6 years ago, I still advise and market, do marketing for several different companies, mostly in the health and wellness space, but I advise all sorts of companies. And over the last 6 years, about maybe 6-7 years ago, I had an unfortunate incident where my father had taken his own life, and so that had a big impact on me. Fortunately, I was already in the world of understanding energy and energy healing, and it was probably 6 years ago that I combined my skill of marketing along with my newfound skill of energy healing. First, I helped myself out, because obviously I was in a really dark place after that had happened to me. And then once I kind of dug myself out of that hole, I actually had a client that was a marketing client of mine. She was about ready to go in for a major back surgery, and she and I had a conversation One of the things that maybe we'll touch on today, Doug, is how if somebody's energy is really off, it actually shows up in the business, right?
Yep.
The business is really just a reflection of the entrepreneur's, thoughts, beliefs, and energy. And so her business was, really wonky, and she was about ready to go in for a major back surgery. I had a conversation with her, ended up doing a little bit of work on her, and I remember doing a FaceTime call with her daughter, and I think it was the following day after she had done a session with me, and her daughter said, what the F did you do to my mom? She had radically shifted. Long story short, she didn't need the surgery, and that kind of started my fascination with, energy and doing this for other people. And now I've kind of incorporated it in with my business advisory, business and energy to help people in a very unique way than other people.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I think probably one of the few people in business that can combine both, worlds, and it's fascinating to me. What was obviously the personal side, how you got into it is seminal moment. But in terms of helping others, was there, when the woman came out of back surgery, was it more she healed faster physically or emotionally? What was the tactical result here?
Yeah, so, one of the main energy centers that has to do with money is actually in the lower back. And so a lot of times people get lower back pain when they're having money issues. And so when there's a lot of congestion in one of the energy centers that's on the body, that can manifest as, a great deal of pain. And, in the Western world, that's usually resolved sometimes with surgery. Not always does that provide the solution. And so really it was using an energetic solution. At the end of the day, we have our physical body, and most people understand we have like our aura, and then we've got all these different energy centers. And at the end of the day, if there's congestion in something for a great long period of time, that could come from, family traumas, it could come from just being around people that have really bad energy. Energy is always kind of balancing itself out. So if you're around unhealthy people, that can also, lead to it. And so at the end of the day, when the disturbances in the energy body are taken care of, the body already knows how to heal itself. It's
right.
When
you don't have to tell a cut to go make a scab now, right? It knows to do that all by itself.
It already knows how to do that, right?
But you mentioned one thing about most people know about aura energy centers. I would say no, most people do not. They use the word woo-woo a lot, which I think we should address right now, saying, yeah, you can use whatever words you want, right? We have to use words because I think people need to put a label on something so they can have a sentence structure with it. But when talking about the quantum world or woo-woo stuff, it's really hard to get people to have a conversation about it because people label it instantly as a certain way. Like, what is energy? What is this stuff you're talking about? What is an energy center? What's a chakra? Because people will instantly label it and dismiss because they don't understand it, believe it, or been told not to understand or believe it. Big dramatic pause there. You know where I'm going with that one. So talk to me as though I'm an idiot or as I have an open mind, and give me a little background on what this actually means, energy centers. I was kind of curious about that myself.
Yeah, and so I'll start off with kind of how I got a little more clear on the spiritual advising, and then get into the energy centers and such. So somebody that worked for me for several years, just recently, a little while back, I had run into her actually in Austin, and we did a meeting, and she knows me, just like yourself, after working with me for several years, knows me really well. And I had asked her, what she's up to, and she was talking about how she works in the mergers and acquisition and acquiring businesses and all of that. And she had mentioned that most billionaires, they work with a spiritual person because they understand energy. They understand astrology. So millionaires a lot of times don't use that stuff, but the billionaires do. And the way that she explained it is that a billionaire knows how important one single decision could affect their business. And the way that she had described it really made things clear to me is that you don't want to take your dramas from your relationships, the energy from that, anything from your parents or other interactions that you've had with employees, have that in your energy field and have that influence what can be a rather large decision for them. And so she had mentioned the show Billions. There's a character on there named Wendy, and she's like, "You're the male Wendy," And so then I looked into it, and I was like, "Oh yeah, that is sort of what I do." And so really, at the end of the day, people understand. I think it's the 7 chakra system. There's actually hundreds that affect the body, and so at the end of the day, every time we have an interaction with somebody, whether that's over video, over a call, there's actually an energetic cord that is there between you and that person. And so there's information that's traveling, between that. And so, cutting cords is one way that you kind of end the conversation with that person. And so really it's important that most people understand it. If they zoom out, they understand if they're around people for a long period of time that they maybe felt, a certain way, and all of a sudden now they're around a certain person, they notice a shift. So people understand energy in that way and use words to describe that, like, oh, that person, is like, some people use energy vampire, they use different things like that. And so everybody has their own words for energy. And I think people understand it. It's just our words may be different, and that's okay too.
I agree with that. Yeah, I think about like when my dog can sense someone's sad in the house, she'll go and spend more time with that person. Like, oh wow, she's vibration chords, whatever we want to use. There's something that we can't see, taste, touch, or measure, but it doesn't mean it's not there. That's the way I look at it.
And I'm sure everybody's walked into a room where the room even feels off, right? You're just like, I don't like the vibe. Would be the word that people use. And so, as you can see, there's a little smoke coming in front of me. I've always got incense burning. I'm very attuned to energy just because I work with it all day. And so, I make sure that not only is my environment pristine so that the energy feels really good, but also, for myself. People think of, hygiene, and they take care of their hygiene, but they don't think of their energetic hygiene. And so really all that I'm doing is practices that maintain my energetic hygiene so that every day I show up at, I'm not taking yesterday into today, and so there's a few ways to do that. People could take a salt bath is a, really good way. 2 to 3 pound salt bath is something that can shift the energy, for somebody.
Right. And anecdotally, or, we prepared for this, this broadcast today. Doug had not been sleeping well for a good week or two, really pretty poor sleep, 3-4 hours intermittent stuff. And it was rough. And I think the past 10 days I had one night that was 8 hours. And then preparing for this call today, Lee and I got on a call last night, and we talked for a minute, and then he started to say, close your eyes and be still. And lo and behold, I got 8 hours sleep last night, Mr. Kolaski. So it might have been because I was just exhausted for the week, or but I'm gonna go with combo platter here on that one. It wasn't showing any signs of letting up. But what you said was there was some blocking. I'll let you say what you said. Go ahead and tell the audience what you felt, saw, did.
Yeah, and so for yourself, if I could share some of your personal details. If I have permission. Cool. So, where there's a lot of different energy centers around the head, and all of those were rather busy or congested, right? And so, to me, it's always of benefit when I work with somebody, and just so people understand, the way that I'm able to work with people at a distance is explained through quantum entanglement. You can affect an object anywhere in the universe, if you're focused in on it. So once I see somebody or I see a picture of somebody, I'm able to connect to their energy and just see what's going on with their energetic system, right? To me, it's no different. The difference of me, feeling energy is no different than me like feeling the table that's in front of me.
Yeah, the same for you.
It's kind of, I get the same feel just because I'm attuned to the energies, and I'm not special. Anybody can do that with a little bit of training. And so you had a lot of stuff with especially your ajna, and people will get that, a lot of congestion there if they're very, very willful, right? And so if you're trying to force things, then it can create some stuff with the head, and eventually it can lead to headaches and sleeplessness and a host of other things as well. I think you also had a little bit of pain with some of the knees. I remember doing a little work around there too. So it works for, physical pain, ailments. I've worked on really just about any major disease, ailment, pain, help people avoid surgery, or even help people after surgery if maybe the surgery didn't do exactly what they had wanted it to. I've helped with that as well. But pretty cool. Just to point out, Doug and I are a few thousand miles away. We had a quick session over Zoom, and 30 minutes later that evening, he had noticed a pretty radical change from where things were at before. And that's, that also affects, everything else, right? Sleep is kind of at the cornerstone. Typically, it's one of the first things that I get resolved for people, because when you do that, the body has more time to do its own healing process, and you just feel better, you work better, think better, everything.
Right. All right, two-part question. This will take a few minutes, which prepare for this. The first one, I'm so curious about how you learn this, how you apply it. You said everyone's got their intuition, but you're able to refine it for yourself to help others. That's question part one. Part two is we heal ourselves, but we're the worst at it when it's intentional. The body can do it without thinking. Brain gets in the way of that. So how did you learn this? And then how can we help the audience treat themselves and help themselves out? So first, you get this skill.
So I had learned it through a teacher, spending many days with her. And I've, over the last 5-6 years, at least once, sometimes twice a year, I'll spend a week with her, just kind of refining, what I've learned. Right. To me, it's one of those, it's a practice that, anybody can learn. I do also probably about 2 to 3 times a year. I do teach a 2-day course where people can learn the same process that I use to help myself and others. It's kind of the basics to learning about energy and how it works, and people can learn how to help themselves, and at the end of the class, they're able to even help other people at a distance, just like I do. And so, that has been a big part of the process. And then, what was your second question? It was around.
I'm going to come back to that second question, but you told me something before the show about what she said that was like, it's not clairvoyant, it's not mind reading, it's quantum entanglement or whatever. Tell the story about how you and I talked about this word for years.
Yeah, so Doug and I worked together for, it must have been like a 6-year period. And, I was kind of like Doug's right-hand man in this business, right? And we always would fall back on my intuitive abilities, gifts, whatever you want to call it, in the business. And Doug and I had a very specific name for what we had called this. And I remember must have been 6 years ago, I had signed up to work one-on-one with my teacher to help with not only the healing side and learning some of that, but also as basically my business advisor in my marketing business as well. And, it was a pretty significant, jump or leap, to do so, a significant investment in commitment, because it was a 1-year program at a minimum. And I remember one of the first things that she had said, the first sentence that she said to me was, okay, now we got to get your spidey sense back. And, I just kind of froze in that moment, because me, Doug, and God were the only ones that had known that.
We've never used that term outside of our conversation.
I've never used that. We'd never even used that term outside of speaking to each other. But we had used it quite often in working together, because, it was kind of like our company's guidance system, for lack of better words. And it served us rather well. For time and time again, we'd see examples of how, we'd be like, oh, maybe, and really at the end of the day now, looking through the lens that I have now with the education I have about energy, is that, I was really just kind of reading that person's energy at the end of the day. I was sensitive to energy back then, and kind of turned that off, after going through '06 and, going through a really rough time. I actually had stopped using all of that stuff and kind of got into what I call the mucky muck, right? And stopped using that guidance to guide me, and, struggled for many, many years because of that.
Right. Okay. So so it was, whatever you want to call it, but having that one word pop out the first sentence, like, okay, this is supposed to happen. That's great. The second part of the question is, so we all have this ability, but it's not refined and polished. Your teacher helped you do that. For the purposes of this call, this show, I know there's things that you can probably share with us just to help somebody get a taste for what it's like. And obviously, I want your contact information as well. It's below here in the show. You can, if you're watching on video, show notes. He'll get verbally here in a minute. But what can someone do if they understand there's something off? How can they help, clear their blockages?
Yeah, so one of the things that I'll do for all the guests that are listening to this show is they can just go to energyhealer.com, and there you can just opt in, and there I share a few of the energetic tools that are really easy to use that can be helpful to just get back to kind of your own energy, right? All I'm doing is helping people regain their energetic sovereignty and return the soul back to its original blueprint so that you can do whatever you're here to do on this earth.
Energyhealer.com.
Energyhealer.com. So they can opt in there, and I share a few tools that. Go ahead.
How'd you snag that domain? Was it somebody grabbed it or not?
Oh no, it was quite an investment.
Oh my gosh, dude. Okay, we'll talk about that offline. All right. Anyway, energyhealer.com. Go there. He's got tools and stuff for you. But now he's going to share with us what someone can do today or tonight if they sense a block of some kind. Give us.
So. A few things that you can do, right? So I think your question's kind of centered around like how can you improve your intuition? And so, the way I think of it is intuition is like a muscle, and you want to exercise it consistently. You don't want to, you wouldn't go to the gym and go lift heavy weights if you haven't been there in 6 months and go ahead and lift what your friend is lifting that's been training, for his entire life. And so I think the same thing of intuition. What a lot of people do is they will go into a very big decision and rarely ever use their intuition, and then they'll use their unhoned intuition skills to make a major decision. Right. Which is in my mind, it's a really big mistake. And so what I would encourage people to do is use your intuition on a daily basis and have fun with it. Since we are playing with energy and spirit, we want to keep it light and fun and make a game out of that. If your phone is ringing, like intuitively tune into who is it that's before you look, who is that person, right? Use it for determining, what happens next. What somebody's going to do, what action somebody's going to take. Like, just keep playing with it. And I would encourage you to do it on a daily basis. And, by doing that and using it more often, it kind of goes back to that, like, working out example as to how I would start honing your intuition. So that's number one, use it daily in any way that you can think of that's going to benefit you. And as you use it more and more, it's only going to get better and better. The other thing, and this goes back to the conversation I had with the girl that used to work with me, is that you also want to do some things to clean up your energy, right? Because if you are around people and they've got poopy energy, at the end of the day, there is some sort of an exchange. People can understand that. And you don't want to have, kind of poopy energy going on with you when you're tuning into intuition or making decisions of any type of level in your business or personally, because it's not going to put you in the right on the right path. And so, a few things that people can do in the energyhealer.com. One of the things I teach you is just how to cut cords. That's really probably one of the best tools that you can use to, start regaining your energy so that it's not kind of spread out, all over the place with all these other people and connections that you've had. The other thing is, either do a salt bath or a salt shower or jump in the ocean. Yeah. If you think of like a surfer's energy, right? It's super light, they're not stressed out about anything. And, I would say that I would argue that part of that is because they're hanging out in salt water. Salt water as a way of kind of eating away at poopy energy, and, nature as a way of recycling that, with the sun and cleaning up that energy. And so, salt is really cheap, beneficial tool that can help people just feel a lot better in their body. Because when you feel better, you're not only going to feel healthier, you're going to be healthier, but it's also going to help you with your business and how you interact with people that are out there. And then probably the last thing is doing daily meditation practice. Even spending 10, 15 minutes with the right meditation, it's going to flush out your energetic system and kind of get rid of a little bit of that poopy energy as well.
Yeah.
So in doing so, you're just going to be operating from a much higher vibration, and that's going to lead to better results in your business and with your health as well.
Nice. Okay. So follow-up questions. Number one, cutting cords. Sounds like that could be, painful. Cutting a cord sounds, I know it's not, but give me an example of somebody who's got a challenge in life, what it would be, maybe using one of your stories, maybe best actually, and how you can, temporarily or distance or whatever you got to do to pull that off, cutting a cord or connection.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, every time you have an interaction, there's some sort of a cord, and even if you have a thought about something, there is an energy that's going out into the ethers to start working and creating that thing, right?
Okay.
From thought to matter. And so sometimes people will also have negative thoughts, right? And you can not only cut cords to a person, but you can also cut cords to a thought, a thing. Yeah. So if somebody has, it's a great way to interrupt negative patterns. So say somebody has just like, I call it loopy thoughts around a person or thing that's not serving them. You can just go ahead and gather up the cords and cut the cord to that thought. And over time, that's going to become less and less prevalent, because no longer does that thought have as much energy, because you're cutting that loop to that particular thought or that idea.
Very good. Okay. And the third thing you mentioned, I forgot about it now. What was the third thing? Cords and
Salt baths, and then meditating.
Salt bath a second. The meditation. Okay, meditation. Because I've tried this several times, and as I mentioned the other day, like only 2 times was I super successful. Most time the monkey mind, it's just rampant. You try the Om, you try to do things to clear it, but it takes over. For those entrepreneurs with a shiny object syndrome and who have 18 thoughts at once, how do you help them actually clear out and empty?
I would say the best thing is probably to start with a guided meditation, where somebody is guiding you through a process.
Yeah.
If for somebody to sit, with no guidance, if they have a whole lot of stuff going on, with their energy, it can be very, very challenging. And that could be discouraging for somebody. So I would just say, there's lots of apps and different things that are out there where you can have a guided meditation that walks you through a process for 10 minutes or so. So I would start with something like that, and that's just going to set somebody up for success, and it's still going to serve the same benefit as just sitting there in silence.
Do you have any of those in your course or your website? You got a great voice.
For anybody that opts in, we'll go ahead and I do have a meditation that I can send over as well that would be really helpful with that.
A soothing voice, Lee. It's very calming.
I try.
Yeah. All right. Very good. I want to hear about a story, another story of something you worked on. You have any other? Oh, you know what? Before I get started, give me the negative side. This is interesting to me. Some people think it's wacky. I don't care. There's positive, negative, and there's negative energy, right? There's good and evil. And according to my favorite movie, not one topic, Devil's Advocate, it's slid in there as a benefit. It's actually negative, and we don't know it because we're dumb humans. How do you discern when you're doing things to help yourself out and your intuition right now? How do you know if it's serving the force, the light side?
I think for that, it just comes down to spiritual discernment. That's something that I've always just had from kind of the very beginning, because to be honest, a lot of the spiritual stuff and things that are out there and people that are out there, I don't necessarily resonate with, and that just comes down to discernment, right? And getting back to a little of like trusting your gut.
People that we both know that talk a good game, but the spidey sense is saying they're not
because
the right coach.
At the end of the day, somebody can hide who they are with their words,
Yeah.
but they actually can't hide their energy. And so if more people paid attention to
Uh,
somebody's energy, then that's going to serve them far more than somebody that has nice words and is saying all of the right things.
that is going back to trusting your gut. You know, it
Mhm.
feels off, sounds good. Yeah, not a good match. Interesting. Okay, back to my story. So I want to hear another story of somebody, you know, a little
Yeah,
bit.
so numerous stories that I've had. One of them that
My
comes to
sleep
mind.
story is not that interesting. Okay, you can sleep, big whoop. Give me something more dramatic.
Yeah, so I had a really cool one that actually happened. I rarely work on people in person, and I remember the day pretty vividly. I'd worked on several people that day, and my last appointment I actually didn't need to take because it was actually a doctor that was in the ICU, and something miraculous happened. He was on his way home, so he didn't need to do
Yeah.
the session that we had scheduled. So
Mhm.
I was really hungry. I walk outside of my door of my apartment, and literally four or five of my neighbors are standing around one of my other neighbors that, was in crutches. He had all of these leg braces, on his legs. And, as I walked through him, I'm really sensitive. I knew exactly what had kind of happened. I could kind of feel the
Yeah.
pain that was going on in his body. Long story short, he was actually right down the street and was in a really bad motorcycle accident. He ended up breaking, I want to say it was like 16 bones between his legs, shins. So he was also, he used to be a motocross rider. And I
Mhm.
think they had given him some opioids or different drugs before. And so he knew that he absolutely did not want to have any part of that. So he was in significant pain when I had saw him. This was maybe 24 hours after the accident. And even his voice, you could hear the pain in his voice when
Yeah.
he was speaking to me. And so I just looked at him and said, "Would you like my help?" And, there's three or four people that are kind of around him. And I just kind of interrupted and wasn't paying attention to anything else. I just like zoned in on him. And he's like, "Huh?" And I go, "I think I could get you out of pain." And he's like, "I'll do whatever." I was like, "Okay." I didn't even have his phone number. So
Yeah.
I got his phone number. I was like, "Okay, let me text you in like 30 minutes after I eat." And him and his girlfriend had come over, started working on him. Within like 30 seconds, he had fallen asleep, did the work. And I remember after it was all done, because he had all these different leg braces and stuff that was on his legs. I was like, you could walk now. And he kind of like looked at me like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Yeah, like it looks good, because I kind of see what's going on with the energy." And I could tell his brain was,
Yeah.
kind of struggling with that a little bit. And I remember him putting his crutches in his right hand. And so he had walked out of here. And what was cool about it, and he was, on his own with that. And then I live in a place where I'm in kind of the top unit or
Mhm.
corner of the building. So I have a
Yeah.
visual of, the
Mhm.
street. And I remember I was sitting in this chair that's over here, looking out the window, and I see him crossing the street. And it was really interesting because he had his crutches with him because he was going to go to a business that's nearby. And he started with the crutches a little bit. And I'm like, "Oh, you don't need those." And then halfway across the street, he puts them in his hand and he ends up just walking across the street. So in his mind he was still getting used to the
Yeah.
idea that you didn't need him. And then I see him maybe 15 minutes later, and I live off a rather busy street. He
Yeah.
literally is playing Frogger, like almost running across the street. Like he didn't cross at the light, and basically was kind of jogging across the street. And so I ended up running into him several times, after
But
that.
not
And
running over him, running into him. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
no major, he
Yeah.
didn't have to do any physical therapy, never did anything.
With
And I
16 broken bones.
Yeah, no therapy, no nothing. And so I finally did an interview with him. It's one of my testimonials
Yeah.
up on my website. And I asked him, "So what do the doctors think of all this?"
Yeah.
And he had told me, he's like, the doctor was like, "I can't believe that you walked in here on your own." And this was,
Hmm.
just a couple of weeks, after the accident. And he's like, "Why is that?" And he's like, "You had 16 broken bones. Like, it's like, all of a sudden, you know, 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 it's like, all of a sudden, you unbelievable. And that just plays into what we had talked about at the beginning of the call is like, at the end of the day, when you get the energy sorted, the body can do some pretty miraculous things. And that also plays into what can happen in somebody's business, right? When your energy is, and you get all the thoughts and all the things kind of cleaned up, it just allows for things to happen at a much faster rate.
Wow. To be clear, we didn't, his bones didn't heal rapidly, but his pain was gone within a few minutes, right?
Yeah, his pain was gone
because of it,
almost immediately.
Because the time it takes to heal is dictated by the body, but prescribed by physicians sometimes, and not always the same thing. Maybe, huh?
Yeah, like he was just on a very different level of consciousness to be able to even participate in all of that, right? Like he was the right person that. It was nice too because he didn't have any drugs or any intervention of anything from the Western world. Right? He was just of the mindset that like, I don't want to go down that road. I know what that looks like. I don't want to get, addicted to some, whatever. I'm just going to tough this out because I know that doesn't work. He already had been down that path before. This wasn't his first time breaking a bone, doing something like that. And so it was just like a really divine timing that I had seen him at that time and had that happen, Another story that I think of really quick that was equally as miraculous, that I had a woman that she came to me and her husband or ex-husband, husband at the time, was cheating on her, and she ended up contracting AIDS from him. And so, when I had first started working with her, there was just a lot of other things that were going on, with that. And after working with her for, this was over a period of several weeks, I think it was about 5 weeks that I was working with her. She ended up going to the doctor, and there's a certain test that they do to determine, the where the AIDS is at based on, I think, what like a white blood cell count or something like that.
So a load thing or something, right?
Yeah, it's basically the load that's there. And so 20 is considered undetectable. And so when we were still working together, she was down to a 30. And not too long ago, she had texted me, this is like a month or two ago, she goes, now it's down to a 10 or 0. So basically non-existent. That's something that, at least in the Western world, would be considered incurable, not something that is possible. And I just try to exist in a world that's a little bit different than that. I have a little bit different belief, and just another person that, it was pretty miraculous to see and to be a part of that journey for that person.
Yeah. That's a big disclaimer, folks. Okay. These are results not typical. This is not medical advice. These are great stories.
I'm not giving any medical advice. I'm definitely not.
That's right. My gosh, that's amazing. I just love it. I love stuff like this. Lee, thank you so much for being on the show today. Lee Kolaski, energyhealer.com. Check it out. He's the real deal. Trust me, because I sleep better. And we grew a pretty good business together around their real estate days. So it all works if you work it. Trust your gut, but not with some guidance from Mr. Kolaski. Any parting words of wisdom?
You are your energy. So take care of your energy and you'll live a much more blessed, magical life.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it. Folks, that's the closing the show today. If you haven't taken notes, just right below, just click below and download them. They're all yours. And stay in touch. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.